we are so happy. We know we play at home in front of our fans, and we front a big team like Atletico, but everyone worked well, and yeah.
Another game, another clean sheet. Just how much confidence does your defensive record give you going into each game?
Yes, it's good for us. It's giving us too much confidence, and we need to keep going. And yeah, we just started the season, and we need to keep pushing and work a lot.
Gabriel Magalhães. When he first walked into Arsenal's dressing room in 2020, few believed he'd become the heartbeat of their defense. He was raw, impulsive, sometimes reckless, a towering Brazilian center back who looked powerful, but unstable. The critics said he wasn't Premier League ready. Rival fans mocked his mistakes. Even Arsenal supporters wondered if he'd survive the brutal pace of English football. But somewhere between the chaos and the criticism, Gabriel changed. Not overnight, not with one performance, but through sweat, scars, and silence. He became the defender no one wanted to play against. A warrior who doesn't just stop goals, he starts them. A leader who bleeds for his club, but rarely takes the spotlight. Now, as Arsenal's title ambitions grow sharper, so does his presence. Every header cleared, every interception timed to perfection. Each one whispers the same warning. Gabriel is no longer just a defender, he's the wall that holds Arsenal's future together.
Gabriel, because like I said, man has been coming up with some clutch goals, especially from set pieces too, which we're thinking Brazil could use of late.
Yet, behind the strength lies a story few are talking about, a hidden evolution, both tactical and terrifying. This is the scary truth about Gabriel nobody is noticing. He was born in the dusty neighborhoods of Pirituba, on the northwestern edges of Sao Paulo, a place where football was both escape and identity. For Gabriel, the game wasn't just sport, it was language, a way to be heard in a world that often ignored the quiet ones. At 13, when most of his friends were still dreaming of a professional contract, Gabriel took a bus to the coastal city of Florianopolis to join Avaí FC's youth academy. He lasted only a week. The distance, the homesickness, the unfamiliar voices, it was too much. He packed his bag and returned home. Yet something in him refused to die quietly. 2 weeks later, he took that same bus again. This time, he stayed. At Avaí, coaches quickly realized that the tall, shy boy from Pirituba had something special. He wasn't the most gifted technically, but he was obsessed with improvement. He trained harder than everyone else, arriving early, leaving late, forcing himself to play with older boys just to learn faster. Within 3 years, he signed his first professional contract, and by 2016, he was part of the Avaí side that earned promotion to Brazil's Serie A. That season caught the eye of European scouts. Among them, the French club Lille, OSC, then managed by Luis Campos and Christophe Galtier, who had built a reputation for turning unknown South Americans into European stars. In January 2017, Gabriel flew to France and signed a 4.5-year deal. His first few months in Europe were brutal. He didn't speak French, barely understood English, and the cold winter of northern France felt like another planet compared to Brazil. He was loaned to Troyes, then to Dinamo Zagreb in Croatia, barely featuring for either side. Many expected him to fade away, another talented Brazilian lost in the shuffle of European football. But Gabriel refused to give up. He spent his time off learning French, watching videos of top defenders, studying positioning, timing, and body angles. By the time he returned to Lille in 2018, he had transformed himself into a disciplined, composed center back. When he finally got his chance in 2019, starting in a 2-0 win over Guingamp, he seized it. His aerial power, reading of the game, and calmness under pressure stood out. Within months, he was starting regularly alongside the veteran Jose Fonte. The old Portuguese defender became his mentor, teaching him how to think like a leader, how to control the line, how to speak when it mattered and stay silent when it didn't. That partnership anchored Lille's defense in the Champions League and caught attention across Europe. Galtier would later say of him, he was patient, he waited, he worked, and when the chance came, he never looked back. By 2020, Arsenal came calling. Mikel Arteta and technical director Edu were rebuilding the club's identity, seeking young, fearless players who would redefine Arsenal's defensive culture. The club had been criticized for its fragility at the back for nearly a decade, and they saw in Gabriel a cornerstone for a new era. The transfer battle was fierce. Napoli and Everton also wanted him, but Arsenal's Brazilian connection, Edu's persuasion, and the project Arteta described won him over. The deal was worth around £27 million, a significant investment for a 22-year-old who still had everything to prove. When Gabriel Magalhães arrived in North London in the summer of 2020, Arsenal were not a team of balance or belief. The club was still reeling from the inconsistencies of the post-Wenger years, and Mikel Arteta, only months into his tenure, was trying to rebuild not just tactics but a fractured identity. Into this turbulence walked a 22-year-old Brazilian defender who could barely speak English, had never played in a league as intense as the Premier League, and was suddenly being asked to anchor one of football's most scrutinized backlines. His start was dramatic. On his Premier League debut against Fulham, Gabriel scored with a towering header and produced a commanding defensive display. For a brief moment, fans believed Arsenal had finally found their defensive rock, but football in England is rarely kind to new defenders, and the weeks that followed revealed the harsh reality of adaptation. The tempo was quicker, the duels more physical, and the tactical structure around him unstable. Arsenal's defense that season was a rotating door. David Luiz, Rob Holding, Pablo Mari, and even a young Callum Chambers all partnered him at different times, each with their own style. Gabriel was often left exposed, trying to anticipate both his man and his partner's mistakes. He started strongly but soon faced the inevitable dip. A red card against Southampton in December 2020 summed up his early struggles. A mix of overcommitment and emotional intensity, the pace of the league punished his eagerness, and critics questioned whether his aggression could ever be controlled. Pundits described him as raw but reckless, while rival fans mocked his decision-making. Yet behind closed doors, Arteta and his staff saw a different picture. A defender who never hid, who faced his errors head-on, and who was determined to learn. Gabriel spent hours after training learning how to defend against the Premier League strikers, studying movement, footwork, and body angles. He adapted his timing, improved his positioning, and slowly learned the subtle art of patience. His coach at Lille, Christophe Galtier, had once said that Gabriel's greatest weapon was not his strength, but his ability to listen and apply. That same humility began to pay off in London. He became calmer in possession, more selective in challenges, and more vocal on the pitch. Despite language barriers, his leadership qualities began to emerge through his energy and presence. There were moments that tested him deeply. During the winter of 2020, when Arsenal's form collapsed and the team drifted into mid-table, Gabriel's confidence wavered. He caught COVID-19, missed several key matches, and returned looking off rhythm. Social media turned on him quickly. Fans who once praised him now doubted whether he could handle English football. But Gabriel's response to adversity became the blueprint of his career. Instead of breaking, he regrouped. In training, he fought harder, demanded more from himself, and earned his place back with consistency. The 2021-22 season marked a subtle transformation. Gabriel's defensive duels grew cleaner, his distribution sharper. He missed only 3 league games all season and finished with 5 goals. Remarkable numbers for a center back. In matches against Leicester City, West Ham, and Wolves, he produced decisive performances, scoring match-winning headers and leading the line with authority. He was no longer just reacting to games, he was dictating them. Still, the learning curve was steep. His aggressive style sometimes left spaces behind, especially when Arsenal's fullbacks pushed forward. Opponents like Manchester City and Liverpool exploited those gaps, forcing him to refine his judgment of when to step up and when to hold his ground. Arteta worked closely with him on body positioning, defensive triggers, and transitions. Slowly, Gabriel learned to channel his intensity rather than be consumed by it. His turning point came in August 2022 in a match against Fulham. He made a costly error that allowed Alexander Mitrovic to score, and for a moment it felt like history repeating itself, the old narrative of a reckless defender resurfacing. But in the 86th minute, Gabriel redeemed himself, scoring the winner from a corner. That moment captured everything about his journey: mistakes, resilience, and redemption. Arteta later said that the goal summed up his mentality. He never hides, he always fights back. By late 2022, Gabriel had become a cornerstone of Arsenal's project. The club offered him a new long-term contract, and his influence extended far beyond the pitch. Inside the dressing room, he had become known for his discipline and quiet leadership. Younger players admired how seriously he approached preparation. Even veterans respected his composure in difficult matches. It wasn't a perfect rise, far from it. His early seasons were marked by inconsistency, language barriers, tactical adaptation, and moments of public criticism. But through it all, he never lost focus. He learned from every setback, treating each mistake as fuel for improvement. Gabriel didn't arrive at Arsenal as a finished product. He arrived as a fighter in progress, one who earned every inch of respect through effort, humility, and resilience. By the time William Saliba finally returned to Arsenal in the summer of 2022, something had shifted within Gabriel Magalhães. The once restless and uncertain young defender had hardened into experience, but he still needed balance beside him. Arsenal had spent years searching for a center-back partnership that could match the chemistry of old Campbell and Toure, Adams and Keown, and in Saliba, Arteta saw the missing piece. What followed wasn't just the formation of a partnership, it was the rebirth of Arsenal's defensive identity. At first, there were doubts. Two young defenders, both in their early 20s, tasked with carrying a title-chasing defense in the world's most demanding league. It felt like a gamble. Saliba had returned from France with confidence and poise, but the Premier League is ruthless. Gabriel, on the other hand, had become Arsenal's emotional anchor. Vocal, intense, and physically commanding. Their differences were striking. Saliba was all composure and calculation. Gabriel, all fire and instinct. But football, like balance, often thrives on opposites. From the opening weeks of the 2022 to 2023 season, their chemistry was unmistakable. When Arsenal pressed high, Gabriel stepped out like a hunter, breaking lines and winning duels with aggression. When the team dropped deep, Saliba read the play, sweeping behind with calm assurance. The two moved like synchronized gears in a machine finally functioning at full rhythm. Together they made Arsenal difficult to break down, and their understanding gave Arteta the freedom to push his fullbacks higher, trusting that the center halves would absorb any counterattack. Their numbers told the story. Arsenal finished that season with one of the best defensive records in the league, conceding 43 goals, and Gabriel ranked among the top Premier League defenders for aerial duels won, clearances, and goals scored. He was no longer just defending, he was scoring crucial goals that changed games. His headers against Fulham, Chelsea, and Wolves were not just statistics, they were statements. Arsenal's set pieces, once a weakness, had become a weapon, and Gabriel was the spearhead. Off the ball, his influence deepened. Arteta trusted him to marshal the line, to be the voice that commanded Arsenal's shape in transition. In training, teammates described his communication as relentless. Even when words failed, his gestures and body language guided the team's structure. He had grown into the role once held by veterans like Koscielny and Vermaelen, a defender who not only stopped attacks, but organized the entire orchestra behind him. Yet what made Gabriel's transformation even more impressive was his humility in sharing the spotlight. Saliba's elegance and composure drew headlines, but Gabriel embraced the unseen work. He covered the left side of the pitch almost single-handedly, often facing 2-on-1 situations when Arsenal's left back advanced forward. Analysts noted that his role required enormous discipline, stepping into midfield to challenge, then retreating quickly to shield space behind. It was a role of controlled chaos, one he mastered with repetition and instinct. Still, his fire never vanished. When Arsenal faced physical strikers, players like Erling Haaland, Ivan Toney, or Darwin Núñez, it was Gabriel who met them head on. He relished the physical battles, the shoulder-to-shoulder duels that define Premier League warfare. In those moments, he wasn't just defending, he was asserting dominance. Haaland himself once described Gabriel as annoying to play against, a defender who never gives you a moment's rest. That reputation grew across Europe. Opponents began preparing specifically for his aggressive pressing, yet few managed to neutralize him for long. The pair's influence reached beyond tactics. It became psychological. Arsenal's young side drew confidence from their defensive spine. In games where the pressure suffocated lesser teams, Gabriel's energy ignited resilience. When Arsenal conceded, his reaction was never despair, it was defiance. He demanded intensity, clapped his teammates back into focus, and refused to let heads drop. This emotional leadership, once hidden behind language barriers, had become visible to everyone watching. But greatness often attracts scrutiny, and as Arsenal began mounting serious title challenges, rivals studied Gabriel's habits. His proactive defending, while brave, left spaces behind him. Teams like Manchester City tried to exploit that by drawing him out of position, slipping runners in behind. His duels with Haaland became symbolic, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable wall. In one match at the Etihad, their clash boiled into open confrontation, captured on cameras and replayed across social media. It wasn't just competition, it was pride, power, and passion colliding at full force. Through it all, Gabriel never lost control of his narrative. He remained Arsenal's most consistent presence, starting nearly every league game, scoring vital goals, and carrying his team through defensive adversity. Even when Saliba missed games due to injury, Gabriel shouldered the responsibility alone, guiding replacements like Jakub Kiwior and Ben White with authority. Arteta later admitted that Gabriel's absence in training sessions felt like losing our heartbeat. By the end of the 2023-24 season, it was clear Arsenal's resurgence was built not only on attacking flair or Arteta's philosophy, but on a wall made of two men, one calm, one relentless. William Saliba was the elegance, but Gabriel Magalhães was the engine, the enforcer, the voice that made everything whole. Together, they had turned Arsenal's defense from its weakest point into its proudest strength. And as the next season approached, Gabriel stood on the threshold of something greater. His growth from a struggling youngster to a defensive general had been written in sweat and sacrifice, but hidden within his rise was a new challenge, one that would test his body, his leadership, and the very foundation of Arsenal's ambition. The wall he helped build was strong, but in football, even the strongest walls can crack under pressure. By the time Arsenal's defense began commanding respect across Europe, Gabriel Magalhães had already become something of a paradox. A player whose greatness wasn't defined by viral clips or flashy moments, but by the quiet efficiency that statistics rarely celebrate. He didn't score 20-yard screamers, didn't dribble past opponents, and rarely gave interviews. Yet every time Arsenal kept a clean sheet, every time the backline looked unbreakable, Gabriel's fingerprints were all over it. To understand his impact, you have to look beyond the highlights. During the 2022-23 and 2023-24 seasons, Gabriel ranked among the Premier League's top 5 defenders for aerial duels won, clearances, and successful tackles. But perhaps more importantly, he was first among all Arsenal players in recoveries. Regaining possession, snuffing out danger before it could even reach the box, the numbers reveal a pattern. When Gabriel played, Arsenal averaged fewer shots conceded per game and more control in transitions. When he was absent, the team's defensive shape often wobbled, and opponents exploited the left channel more aggressively. Arteta once said in an interview, "People see the tackles and the headers, but they don't see the distances he covers to prevent danger." It was a simple statement that summarized the defender's invisible craft. Gabriel was mastering the defensive details that turn a good team into a great one. Micro decisions made in milliseconds, such as when to press, when to drop, when to shift the line. He had become the silent metronome of Arsenal's defensive rhythm. Arsenal's analysts noticed the same trend. During set pieces, Gabriel's presence transformed the team's threat level. In 2023-24, the Gunners scored more goals from corners than any other Premier League team, and Gabriel himself contributed multiple headers that changed the course of games. Against Chelsea, Crystal Palace, and Fulham, his timing wasn't luck, it was practiced precision. He studied the movement of goalkeepers, the flight of the ball, the positioning of blockers. His runs were rehearsed like choreography, part strength, part science. The analyst's data site even noted that Arsenal's expected goal value from corners nearly doubled when Gabriel was on the pitch. But numbers only tell half the story. Emotionally, his consistency gave the team confidence. Teammates trusted that if they lost possession high up the pitch, Gabriel would be there. Stepping in, intercepting, resetting, he had become Arsenal's failsafe, the insurance policy that allowed Arteta's high-pressing system to thrive. That tactical bravery, pushing the fullbacks forward, encouraging midfielders to play between the lines, only works if your center backs can hold the line with intelligence and courage. Gabriel gave Arsenal that freedom. And yet, despite all this, he remained underappreciated outside North London. Media narratives often focused on Saliba's elegance or Rice's versatility, leaving Gabriel in the shadows. Pundits talked about Arsenal's attacking trio, their midfield control, or Arteta's philosophy. Rarely about the Brazilian who quietly erased danger week after week. Even some fans underestimated his role, mistaking composure for simplicity. But inside the club, the picture was clear. He was indispensable. The turning point of the 2024-25 campaign came in early April when Gabriel Magalhães sustained a hamstring injury against Fulham and was ruled out for the rest of the season. His absence exposed just how vital he had become. Arsenal's defensive spine suddenly felt shakier, their clean sheet record imperiled, and the reflective calm he brought to the backline noticeably gone. Though the team still fought, the defensive rhythm and aggression that defined them before seemed less certain. When Gabriel returned in the following season, many felt the line looked sharper, higher, and more confident once more. His recovery coincided with another landmark, a new long-term contract signed in June 2025. It was more than just a renewal, it was recognition. Arsenal were tying down the man who had become their defensive heartbeat. At 27, Gabriel was entering his prime years, blending experience with intensity, turning from promise into permanence. There's something poetic about his evolution. The boy who once couldn't settle in France had now built a fortress in London. The player who was mocked for being too rash had become the standard of reliability. And while the public celebrated the flashier stars, those within Arsenal knew the truth. Gabriel wasn't just part of the defense, he was the defense. Yet beneath all the praise and progress, a new question was beginning to surface inside the club and among analysts. Had Arsenal become too dependent on him? When a system is built around one man's instincts, what happens if he falters? Or if opponents learn to exploit the spaces he leaves behind? Because as good as Gabriel had become, every strength in football hides a secret weakness. And as the 2025-26 season began, that secret was about to be tested. Yet for all his tactical maturity, the question persists. What happens when Gabriel isn't there? The answer was revealed painfully during his hamstring injury in 2025. Without him, Arsenal's line dropped deeper, their pressing weakened, and their confidence wavered. His absence exposed not just a gap in personnel, but a dependence that bordered on dangerous. It showed how central his decision-making was to the entire structure. Arsenal could replace his position, but not his presence. It's a paradox. The very player who gives Arsenal stability also embodies their greatest tactical risk. Gabriel's game exists in that thin space where courage meets consequence. He steps forward not because it's safe, but because he believes he must. Every duel is a test of timing, every tackle a statement of authority. And as Arsenal push higher, dream bigger, and chase titles, that balance becomes both their strength and their warning. For now, Gabriel Magalhães remains their defensive heartbeat, the man who makes the system possible. But as opponents study him, as wear and tear tests his body, and as expectations rise, one truth becomes unavoidable. Arsenal's empire of control is only as strong as the man who guards its gates. And if that man ever falls, the entire structure trembles. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more cinematic football stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.